There's a cat over here. There's a cat over there. And the wrong one died. And the wrong one died.
Welcome to The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. I'm your host, Mike Abrams, and today we have another amazing guest. He was on the most recent U.S. national tour of CATS as Munkustrap. So welcome, Dan Hoy, and thanks for joining me.
Hey, thank you for having me.
I am very excited because I have not been able to ask a lot of questions about Munk to anybody in the cast. So I'm excited that you can kind of humor me with some of the stuff that either are real rumors I made up, and everything in between. But we'll get there. I want to start with kind of your CATS history. So walk me through, when was the first time you saw it? Like, did you see it as a kid? What was your first interaction with the show?
Yeah, so it's actually funny that you asked this, because when I was on the road, you know that Lady Gaga joke when she said the same story 100 times? It's like when you walk into a room with 100 people and one person says, and they made the compilations. You can make a compilation of the story I'm about to tell with the amount of times that I have told this story. But when I was a kid, I had the VHS tape of the 1998, the Pro Shot.
Yep.
I watched it so many times that I actually broke the VHS.
You burned the VHS.
Did. My parents had to buy me the DVD. So I was actually obsessed with this show as a kid. It was one of my first introductions to musical theater. And then never did it growing up. Never had a chance to do it until this production. And this was my first show out of college. So it was a really cool full circle moment for me. Like the show that I had loved so much growing up, finally getting to kind of jump in and do it.
Yeah. So did you see the movie before you saw any stage production, or vice versa?
I saw the movie first. I saw the film version, and then I saw I don't know which tour it would have been, because I don't remember what year it was, but there was a tour that I'm from Cleveland, Ohio originally. So there was a tour that either came through Cleveland or Akron that I would have seen when I was a kid growing up.
So you burned through a 1998 VHS. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, they didn't buy a second VHS. They bought a DVD. And so how many times do you think you've seen that? Like, how many was this like an everyday thing? Because I burned through 2 Tommy Boy VHSs when I was growing up. And we watched it almost daily.
It was a daily occurrence. This for me would have been, I knew every line. I was doing choreo when I was 4. It excited me. So yeah, this was probably a daily occurrence. I knew it like the back of my hand. And what's funny is, because I watched that version so many times, until I got older, I didn't actually know that Growl Tiger was a part of the show originally, like at all, because it wasn't in the 98 version. So I remember listening to the original Broadway recording when I was a little bit older, and I'm like, what is this? This is weird. I don't know what this is.
Yeah, well, we'll be fine, because all of my knowledge is the 1998 movie and the 2016 revival, because I have no history with any other version of it. And so I'm the same way. I'm like, well, if it wasn't in that movie and it wasn't my 2 times seeing the revival, I have no idea what you're talking about half the time. But when you were that age watching it, did you always think you were going to be Munkustrap, or were you who were you? Like, who did you sing and play most often?
There were a few characters. So for me, Munk was always someone who I was drawn to, but I always wanted to play either Tugger or Bombalurina, because Macavity is far too catchy. Macavity is far too catchy. So I would run around the house all the time, just like Macavity. Like I'm like this like little 4-year-old, like strutting down the steps and stuff. But yeah, those would have been the only other 2. But Munk, I just liked, and I can't remember off the top of my head right now the guy who played it in the 98 version, but his presence is so impressive in that film. Like he really he takes up the stage. Mm-hmm. And I remember being really, really drawn to that, probably even a little bit more than the character itself.
I don't think I realized when I first started researching the show or seeing the show, how important Munk is to the entire process. And now it's kind of like, oh, this is a significant character that has a lot of arc and angle to it. And so I'm thinking back to you, as you said, 4, wondering, like, did you really realize that it's like the narrator has such an important piece? Or are you like me and it was just like, oh, Tugger, Mistopheles, like the ones that are just kind of like, especially Mistopheles for me, when I saw that movie, I was like, he's shooting lasers out of his arms, and there's like I don't know, the rainbow flag and everything. I was like, it was just like an experience. And so, but I also watched it as a, much older in my life for the first time.
What's funny is I actually didn't even realize that the character's name was Munkustrap for the longest of times. I just knew him as like the narrator cat, because he doesn't get his own song. And the only time that his name is mentioned is in the naming of cats when they're saying a bunch of other nonsense names. So you're like, who is this person and why is he singing at me? But despite that, I didn't need to know his name as a kid. I just knew that he was a presence and that was someone I was interested in.
That's impressive for that age to be able to recognize the importance of a character that doesn't have like their names sung 1,000 times, which is like every other cat basically that you get to see. So at that age, did you realize all the, like, when did you kind of realize the undertones that go into this show? Was it not until you learned it or you got to do it in the tour? Or did you pick up on it sometime in college or at that point that was like, oh, this is a very different show than just what I sang and danced around to as a kid?
I'll say as a kid, I did understand the story of rejection and of redemption. There because that's pretty clear with Isabella, where it's clearly the tribe has ostracized her for some reason and has banned her for some reason, and she is working to remedy that problem. That I picked up on at a pretty young age.
I was thinking more of the fact that the ball's an orgy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all of that came. I mean, that would have been when I was much older. Because I mean, while I loved it as a kid, I didn't engage with it much until I then booked the show and then went back and watched it. And it's interesting watching it now. Like there's that sequence in the ball where in the original '98 version, like Victoria's like leaning back, and I don't know who it is, but someone's scratching all up on her, and they're getting all involved, and I'm like, oh, this is all sex.
Yeah.
This is all cat sex. This is 5 minutes of cat sex. Cool. I did not pick up on that as a kid. But all the sexual undertones and all of the fan theories. Oh my God. There are fan theories on fan theories on fan theories. And I got to tell you, some of them are pretty accurate to what we talk about with the creatives in the show. Some of them are actually very accurate. But we'll get there.
Well, so let's go into that. I love hearing what you were told. So you get the part, and it's kind of, there is a story, there is all this backstory, and then there's some nuances because there's characters who were friends before, and that's why they kind of play off of it. There's some staging aspects that, like, sometimes these cats are together in one production and not in another production, and so people have their theories based on that. What were you told for your production? And I would say I would love for you to tell me as many cats as you can, but especially about Munkustrap. Like, what is his backstory? What do we need to really know about?
Oh God, see, we could be here for 4 hours doing this. So just to start, what's really cool actually is, and what makes cats really unique beyond just, unitards and yakwigs, the story is malleable. And it changes production to production based on just what's kind of created in the room. There are a lot of relationships that are very solidified, but a lot of the nuances, it's why you have the different productions coming off in different ways, because they're developed in different ways. Different relationships are formed. I don't know many other shows that have that much freedom within its plot, because the plot isn't as structured. I mean, that's just the reality. No one's pretending like Cats has a structured plot. But one of our first, I think it was actually the first week of rehearsal, we sat down with Chrissy Cartwright, who had been involved with the original production back in the 80s. And we had a 3-hour session where she broke down the entirety of the show. All of the relationships, all of the nuances, all of the sort of moment-to-moment interactions for us as they were sort of originally broken down in the room by like Trevor Nunn in that original production. So for Munk, Munk is the son of Old Deuteronomy. He is Tugger's brother. Often he is considered Macavity's brother as well. And for me, like the primary objective throughout the show is to prove my worth. I am to succeed Old Deuteronomy in leadership of the tribe. So the evening for me is to prove that I can lead a Jellicle ball and I can do it effectively and without problems, which obviously doesn't happen. But a lot of the show is about him proving himself. And in terms of his relationships, I think that what he ends up discovering is that he is very drawn in by, at least in our production. And this is why I want to talk to you, because I know that you have a theory that we'll get into.
I do have a theory. I think I made up, but I'm glad to hear that there's some
merit.
There
is some merit to it. So, and in other productions, I loved hearing it, because if you listen to the previous episode about Munkustrap, which I had before this, I hadn't thought of it that way, but that actually is a very, very viable theory. But we'll get there. For our production, and kind of what we developed in the room, was that Demeter and Munkustrap's relationship is newer, and it is. Well, okay. So Demeter has just gotten out of this abusive relationship with Macavity, and she has been trying to escape that relationship that she had gotten drawn into. And Munk, who has this sort of protector complex, is kind of immediately drawn to her. And it takes time, but throughout the show, when he first approaches her in a more intimate way, particularly during the ball, she's very hesitant. She doesn't want that physical contact because of the relationship she had with Macavity. But the reason in my brain that Macavity had returned was because he had claimed ownership over Demeter. And it's the reason Munkustrap then fights. He fights for her honor. And then in our show, it's only after the fight that Demeter actually allows Munkustrap to come in and have that pure moment of intimacy. There's a moment, because there was a moment downstage where after the fight, he's beaten, he's bruised. She comes up and she finally just like offers her paw, offers herself, sort of thing. So that was kind of what we used as the motivation for that relationship.
So you're not fighting to defend your father's honor, to basically get your father back. You're fighting for Demeter.
In a way. I mean, there's Old Deuteronomy been kidnapped as well, and he is the de facto leader of the tribe at this time. So his job is to protect. So there are all of those layered on top. But ultimately, Demeter is at the core of that fight, at least with the revival fight. It starts with him, with Macavity dragging Demeter across. I mean, there are parts where he's dragging Demeter across the stage. Alonso has to break it up, and he keeps returning to her. He keeps targeting her. So I think for Munk, that's just the extra. So not only do I have to protect my tribe, but I have to now prove to Demeter that she can escape this relationship and that she can be here with me and it'll be safe.
Yeah, that's your hero moment for your love interest. There's so many angles to this show that you just don't pick up when you watch it. Because the first time, again, I don't remember basically anything from the first time I actually saw it on stage. I mean, I remember Mungo, Jerry, and Rumple Teaser and memory and just some pieces of it. I was like, oh, that was super fun. And it looks like there's cockroaches and mice on the night. Like, that's kind of weird. Then I saw it again, a little bit more intoxicated. So that one I really don't remember nearly as much either. But then when I watched the 1998 movie, I was like, okay, now let's piece together what I'm missing. Like, what's the storyline? And my interpretation of the fight was Old Deuteronomy's kidnapped, and Munk, as the next in line, basically, is going to fight the kidnapper to get him back so he can make his local choice and, prove that he's kind of ready to go on. It wasn't until I read the rumor that it was Demeter and Munk potentially were together with a child that I had that whole kind of oh, and that's a different layer to this, because I think there's three ways I like the three timelines I had for this. And this was, again, I just always assume people listen to all these episodes, which is probably very naive of me. But if you listen to the Munkustrap episode, the three options I kind of had is that if you assume that there's the abusive relationship with Macavity and Demeter, which is, I think, a fair assumption, and that you had, as Munkustrap, a child with Demeter, which is the other kind of rumor, not that it's like a budding relationship, but it's that you actually have a child. You either had a child with her before she had the abusive relationship. She either left him to have a child with you, or it's after the relationship. So those are kind of the only three ways that I thought that this could go. And all of them are cheating basically on your ex with their brother.
Yeah.
Which is what I thought sparks a fight. And so I think,
which I love.
That's the way I kind of read into this was, okay, now the fight's not about Old Deuteronomy at all. it's Macavity attacking his brother for sleeping with his girlfriend.
And I love that. I had never thought of, I had not thought of the child angle, but I really, really like it. And if I were to ever do the show again, I might want to marry that in there, because it not only then makes the fight about Demeter, but it also becomes protecting their child and what they've built together from what she used to have. So I actually really like that. I would love to see that built in.
I think that's really my end goal with this podcast now, is to just influence future productions with all the stuff that I think is missing from this plot or these angles. That's really where I'm at this point. Is I have a couple. I have a love triangle with Buster Jones, Joey, and Jenny that I think has some merit that we can bake into the next production. I just want to be consulted. That's really what it boils down to. We'll
call Andy Blank and we'll let him know next time next year puts it out.
I'm sure. Exactly. I know everything else about this. I don't even know, like, this is going to be my next question, is going to prove exactly that point. Was Cassandra even in your production?
She was.
Okay. She's not in everyone, right? I think she's a cat that sometimes gets left out. And that's the other rumor, is that you had a child with Cassandra.
That was not an angle that we took. We took more, Cassandra in our production, who was played by the incredible Mariah Reeves for, I believe, the duration that I was on the tour. Just absolutely remarkable. She was always sort of I'm holier than thou. I'm better than you. I don't need this. I'm here out of obligation, but I don't really need you. Was sort of her vibe throughout. But
doesn't mean you couldn't have a baby.
That is true. I mean, listen,
or a kitten with her.
A little litter. But no, I'm interested in seeing Munk being the one to form multiple relationships, especially to escape sort of that pressure of leadership, I like that. This is, again, like, if I ever got to approach the role again, Mike, how did I not know these beforehand?
More things. You have to do some deep digging on the internet rumor mill to find these things. What else? Well, the other rumor that I saw that's kind of a strange one, to be honest, is that you're from one of the wealthy owners. And there's just like a list of cats that I think it's based on the fact that you have a collar, or some of the cats have a collar, that you come from a wealthy owner. But Macavity's not on that list. And neither is Tugger, which is kind of a weird thing of, like, if they're siblings, did the family only adopt like half the litter or something like that?
I would say that. So the collar thing is actually accurate. That is something we talked about. If you had a collar, you had an owner. I do think that personally Tugger has an owner. I think that's why he can remain so aloof, because he doesn't have to think about survival. He's like, you give me chicken, I want salmon, F you, whatever.
Yeah.
But the wealthy owner is what's interesting to me, because for me, I mean, I guess maybe because he's lived in a little bit more luxury.
So the list is you, Buster Jones, Skimbleshanks, Mistopheles, Victoria, Mungo Jerry, and Rumple Teaser.
And the thing is, I agree with a lot of the others on that list. Maybe not Victoria, but the other ones. I mean, Buster Jones, absolutely. Mungo Jerry, Rumple Teaser,
for sure,
100%, because they're stealing from their owners. So yeah, I mean, maybe that's why he's been able to focus so much on, leading the tribe. It's because he doesn't have to think about surviving. Whereas Macavity maybe was the one who was left out. Maybe he was the one who was left out and wasn't given and did not find an owner, and that is what drives his resentment towards his brothers.
Interesting. I could see that. It's next angle.
Mm-hmm.
We're rewriting the story as we go. What other? You said that there's a lot of other fan rumors and fictions that are real, that are kind of baked in. What other ones are there that your cast consciously was like, yeah, we're going to play into this?
I mean, like Bombalurina being like super into Tugger, like all the female cats in Tugger essentially. It's a little built in, but like some of those more sexual relationships, the very explicit relationships between Bombalurina, Demeter, and Macavity. Those were all in there. It's funny that
what about
you mentioned
Tugger Mistopheles?
That's not one that was necessarily baked in, though. I will say, and I won't say
that's all the fan fiction.
I won't say who or where, but I know that there have been times where Tuggers and Mistopheles have gotten together in real life, because that Tugstopheles stuff is so powerful.
There is some very graphic fan fiction about it. It's the most amount of fan fiction that's out there for the show. And so it's like the one that I've definitely, like, I kind of did see that the songs are kind of related. They sing for each other. It's kind of a little scoff when they're starting. It's a little bit of like the pent up sexual energy, but I always do wonder if that's something that's played into or if it's just show by show.
While it wasn't something that was played into for our production, I really like the idea of it. Like, I like because there was actually a really big thing that we talked about, as queer people in the show. I'm a member of the Alphabet Mafia. I had my, fellow castmates that were as well. Something that we were all drawn to the show about is that, people are being intimately involved with each other throughout the show, regardless of gender. It's just very like, men are lifting men, women are lifting women, men and women are getting together. So I love the idea. That Tugger is getting up with the women. He's getting up with the men. He's getting up with the them, that, the thems, the theys, the he's, the she's. Who cares? It's just about what you want and who you love.
They're just, because they're cats.
Exactly.
Like, they're just all cats, which is kind of part of that.
And I love it. So I again, when we put up a production, Mr. Mike, we'll be sure that the Tugstopheles stuff is explicit in that. Not explicit in the way the internet stuff is, though.
I was gonna say, I don't need to write that script for you. There's plenty out there for you. So the other part I'm really interested in hearing about is the Old Deuteronomy relationship. Because we talked about a little bit in the beginning that it's, you're up next. There seems to be a lot of question marks on when is Old Deuteronomy going? Is he, because, it's like, is he even eligible to go to the Heaviside Layer? He's making the decision. Like, when is your turn?
Yeah.
And so I've been very curious about, like, we get one ball, 1 year, one kind of decision. Or I guess I always assume the decision's annual.
Yeah, it is.
That's not.
Okay, yeah.
So it's an annual decision. Are you up next year? What happens to Old Deuteronomy if you are up next year? Is he going to be doing this for eternity? Like, does he have other lives to live? Is he going to be a Jellicle choice one year? Like, what does that look like?
So from my perspective, Deuteronomy knows that his time is coming soon. I think that's kind of a driving force for Munk, because they all know that Deuteronomy is getting older and his time is coming. So the question then becomes, who is going to become then the Old Deuteronomy figure? And there are a lot of those sort of Judeo-Christian heavenly pieces of imagery and allegory throughout the show. So it's like he's sort of the son of who is this godlike figure trying to step into that role. So I would say for me, it's Deuteronomy is going in the next year or two. He is going back to the Heaviside Layer to begin his next life. And Munk is trying to be prepared for that. And before Deuteronomy goes, he wants the affirmation that he's ready. Because I think there is a lot of Munk is extraordinarily high strung throughout a lot of the show, because he desperately wants and needs tonight to go perfectly, to the point that I think he actively offends others at times, because he's so desperate to have everything be exactly as he planned it. He doesn't want any. That's why he's upset when Tugger interrupts. He's upset when obviously everyone's frightened when Macavity shows up. He hates when things are going off script, because this is how he envisioned him proving himself to Deuteronomy. And I think what he learns throughout the show, and ultimately what Grisabella teaches him and what Deuteronomy leads him to understand, is that leadership does not come through tyranny. Leadership comes through understanding. And that's also just one of those reasons that I love this show, because obviously if you were a first time viewer of this, you would never get that. You see a bunch of people in unitards jumping around, flying around, whatever. But the more that you watch the show and the more that you kind of let go of the fact that it is absurd, it's absurdism. I mean, it's modern day musical theater absurdism. You can find those meanings on your own. You get to kind of find those interpretations. And that was what it was for me. That's the relationship with Deuteronomy, is the desperation for acceptance and validation becoming a moment of understanding. Oh, I understand now why you are how you are and how to be a good leader.
In that vein, a piece I find super interesting because I've had a lot of back and forth on if Old Deuteronomy is going to go to the Heaviside Layer at any point, or if he's never going, or if he's done. And he's the decision maker.
Mm-hmm.
If Munkustrap proved his worth, why doesn't he go this year? Like, why doesn't he go instead of Grisabella if he knows that you're ready?
Mm-hmm. Because I think that
and you've kind of done that.
Munk is being groomed for a different role. I think Munk is being groomed to become the next Deuteronomy, so that Deuteronomy can find his peace in the Heaviside Layer and then come back and relive his life and be able to get.
Why can't that be the end of the show?
That could be. I think that absolutely could be. I think that would be a wonderful little transition point where Deuteronomy decides you've proved your worth,
son. You've made it.
So if anything,
here's your kingdom. It's a little Lion King-esque. Yeah. Here's your kingdom. So, although the father's gone in that movie by that point.
So I guess I just discredited Munkustrap for being the cat who should have died. But in that vein, I do think that Deuteronomy could have been the one so that Munk could then take on his rightful mantle as leader. I
never really ranked Munkustrap. I mean, I did because I ranked everybody, but this was never in the competition. No. His job was to be the next judge. Yes. Like, he wants to be the next judge, so he doesn't want to go. And so I think that looking at it from that angle is kind of, you can, because you base it on just, how fun they are. But he's not. But I do think if we're going to say that Old Deuteronomy could go, that then we're saying could have went this year, could have made his own decision. We could have a very different ending.
Because I think by the end, Munk understands the core that Deuteronomy was trying to teach him, the core principle of acceptance, essentially.
But now you've got to go through another full ball.
Exactly. I have to help.
Still making the decision.
I have to help plan next year's ball, because here's the thing: Deuteronomy comes to judge, but I genuinely believe that he does not plan any of the evening's engagements anymore. He comes in he comes in half, like 3/4 of the way through Act 1, right before the ball begins. He, totters in, he just observes, but he doesn't plan anything that's happening. I'm the one. I've set the list. I've helped, determine who's going when, the order of which things are happening. So Munk now has to essentially be the event planner for next year's Jellicle Ball all over again. But I do think that with the knowledge from this one, he'll be a little bit more flexible and understanding of people's positions, but he has to go through all the steps again, all the hoops all over, just to prove the same thing.
Yeah. Everything just for it.
I also,
when we could have ended CATS 1 with Old Deuteronomy as a decision.
And then we could have gone into CATS 2, because you know that Andrew Lloyd Webber loves his sequels. Love Never Dies.
Yeah.
I actually did want to introduce, because I don't know if you've heard this theory. It's not really a canonical theory, but it was something we talked about a bit in the cast with Old Deuteronomy. Have you ever heard the theory that Old Deuteronomy is actually just a serial killer?
No.
Okay.
Tell me more.
So in the original, like the 98 version, I believe in the original production, there was Grisabella didn't fly. She went up a flight of stairs. So the theory was that Old Deuteronomy was claiming that people were going to the Heaviside Layer, but what he was really doing was leading them to a staircase of trash that led to like a fence, killing them, pushing them over the side, and then claiming that whoever was born next was just the reincarnation of whoever had just died. So really what he's done is he's formed this cult of cats that genuinely believe that death is the sort of escape to the next realm, and that you're going to be reborn, and that all these things are going to happen, when in reality all he's doing is satiating his need to kill while getting willing victims to basically audition for the honor.
I love that. That's so great, because it's so ridiculous. I've not heard that. I could see it. It fits. I mean, it's already a really dark show, so anything you tell me at this point, I'm just like, yeah, I mean, it's cats. It makes sense. Like, that could be the thing. That is super interesting. So then he's kind of using Macavity as the bad guy, even as like a cover almost. Like, here's a guy that's going to pretend to kidnap me, but really that's just so I look like I'm the victim in my crime scheme.
I just thought of and I hadn't actually thought about this before, but maybe the whole thing is that he's actually just secretly Macavity in disguise. They're very rarely on stage at the same time. So he comes on and he creates the common enemy and then comes back magically and is like, oh, see, everything's fine. Who's going to the Heaviside Layer now?
They're not in the fight scene at the same time.
They're on stage for the kidnap when he actually kidnaps him.
Okay.
But you could argue that was because there are like cats that go and dress up as doubles and things like that. You could argue like anything like that. But when he returns, so Deuteronomy's not on for the fight. Macavity, is defeated. Then Mistopheles happens, and then Deuteronomy returns. But Macavity's never on stage again with Deuteronomy.
Yeah, he had to go like wash the last body.
Yeah.
He's got to take care of some business.
Oh man.
If that's the case, then then this is how I'm adding to this theory, because I do love it. I think Buster for Jones is hiring the hits.
Oh yeah. He has the money too.
He's got the money. There was a little bit that fits with my love triangle issue with Grisabella.
Mm-hmm.
That Grisabella and him had a past. There were some issues there, and so that's why this hit gets called.
I love it.
And serial killer Old Deuteronomy comes and takes care of business. I'm so glad that children go to this show. Right?
They get
like, can you imagine if you you watch this? You said as like a 4-year-old,
mm-hmm.
and this is you burn through a VHS, and one of the very plausible theories of the show is that the main decision-making cat's actually a serial killer.
He's actually a serial killer. And so, as a 4-year-old, you get to see all of the cats having orgies, the serial killer removing targets by a wealthy man, and, intense
abusive relationship.
Yeah.
And then the brother having a child with the other, with the abused relationship.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love it. Oh, this is tantalizing. This should be a mini-series. This should be like an expanded mini-series right here.
Somebody is out there writing this fan fiction, because it's again, I read a little bit of it and then I just found so much Tugophiles that I just was like, I gotta stop. I can't read any more of this. I was trying to find something, real or of value, and I just found a bunch of like erotic.
Yeah, I was going to say so much erotica out there. Yeah.
That is, I do think like the part of the show that's still so fascinating to me is that I really think if you're a male, you remember Macavity's song. If you're a female, you remember Tugger's song, or not male, female, but if you are interested in men or interested in women, you're probably going to gravitate to those two songs. There's Mungo, Jerry and Rebel Teaser, which is just, I thought was the most fascinating, like just dance number and super catchy. They build the train, Mistopheles, and then Memory. Yeah. And it's like, there's a lot, everything else is like, I did not piece any of the rest together.
And I don't think that most people who are coming to see Cats are going to piece that together. And that's not a slam on anyone, and I have so much respect for like the diehard Cats fans who do come and they do find that meaning. And like, it is genuinely like after the show, when you talk to people that are like, this is like the meaning I found in the piece. I'm like, oh my God, we got to bring that to you. That's amazing. Like that means a lot, like as an actor and as a performer. But for the most part, people are going, it's crazy cool dancing, it's big, and in the revival in particular, I mean, like the lighting design is crazy. So, it's, you get all these amazing moments where lights are flashing across stage and things are exploding and people are flipping and pirouetting and someone's, belting some crazy high note, and then great unitards, jazz hands. You know what I mean? That's what most people are leading with. It is entertainment in its purest form.
Yeah, that was the, as much as I poked fun of it when I saw it the first time, I was still like, this is an incredible feat for everyone participating in this, because as not a dancer, not a singer, I was like, this takes some absurd athleticism to be able to get through the entire show, because it was just nonstop. And then, even in Old Deuteronomy, who's not doing as much of the dancing, I was like, well, that costume looks horrifically hot, and you're going to sit on stage during intermission and you're just going to hang out and let people take selfies with you. And so it's just like everything about the whole production was just an experience, which I did appreciate as like just a fan of going to theater. I was very much entertained, but I also was very confused, was a little bit like very unsure of what I actually witnessed. And then it was like, I kind of could piece together some of the, like, I could see some of the sexual undertones and some of these other things. Then when you start digging, it's like, oh no, there's a serial killer cat.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the thing about the plot is it's meant, because it's meant to be more of even in its creation, and the original creators. I mean, Chrissy Cartwright is the first person to admit, like, the plot of Cats is it's abstract, it's absurd. You're meant to find more meaning in it as an audience member by kind of piecing it together for yourself, creating your own backstories, your own through lines, than it is like us telling you this is the story that we're presenting, which makes it a very unique piece of musical theater. There isn't much else out there like it. But yeah, it's a very, very hard show to do 8 times a week. But, you know, we managed for the most part.
So you kind of led into my next question. Did you see the new movie?
Yes, I did see the new movie.
So as a Munkustrap, you are the narrator in the theater production, and there is a different lens that the new movie goes through. What was your take, like, watching as someone who's been in the cast, knows the backstory and everything? What was your take on the new movie? Believe
it or not, so let me talk specifically Munk first. I liked how they approached that with Robbie Fairchild. I actually did. I think that because they changed, obviously, the context of how we see the story into Victoria's journey into the tribe, right? So I think that you still get his defensiveness. I think that you still get his initial fear and aggression. I do think you lose a little bit of his control over the evening. I think that in the show, there are a lot more moments where he has control over what's happening in the night. There's a lot more narrative moments. There are a lot more moments where it's like, I've made these decisions, or why is this interruption happening? And that's more of his driving force. But what was interesting with Robbie Fairchild is it became more of, who are you? With Victoria, who are you? Why are you here? Okay, you seem like someone who may be able to be accepted here. I'm going to guide you through what you would need to do. He became more of a nurturing force. And I actually think that it was really effective. I really liked Robbie Fairchild's performance in the role. There are other aspects, now talking about the film as a whole, there are a lot of aspects of the film I did not like, just kind of straight up. I mean, the obvious one, and it feels almost cheap to talk about it at this point, the CGI. I mean, the design decisions were poor. And I think... And I have a philosophy here with this, and it's that they just needed to make a decision on where they wanted to go. They needed to kind of either go full cat CGI animation, or they needed to find some creative way to keep them humanoid and not make them like alien. Like, I actually heard some like really interesting approaches that were like, why couldn't they have just used like interesting costuming and like mask work to make it, it's already absurd. Let's just buy into it and make it abstract. Or they needed to go like the full CGI animated route. And there was actually a film, a Spielberg pitch actually, for a Cats film, for an animated Cats film that was going to take place after the London Blitz. Like everything happens in World War II after the Blitz. They were going to have this whole evening, a whole animated piece. That to me sounds more captivating than what they ended up doing from a directional perspective on the movie, because I think they just didn't make enough distinct and deliberate decisions with where they wanted to go.
For sure. I did like the way they handled Munkustrap. I thought the Victoria angle was actually very smart, because if you've not seen it, it's already very loose. Like, Hollywood needs a little bit more of a plot line. So they kind of gave it that. The CGI was, it's what got all the press, because it was also very rushed, which was very clear towards the end. I actually struggled most with the fact that there was such an incredible group of dancers that you never really got to see dance, because they just cut from scene to scene to camera to camera. And instead of seeing like any movement, like I would have just preferred a wide angle of like the ball.
Yeah. And
instead of all these back and forth.
And Andy's choreo is so cool. It's so cool in the film. And there was, and I think this is public knowledge at this point, there were a lot of, around the 2016 revival, there were a lot of disagreements about what direction the choreography should take, with the original versus kind of Andy's new direction. And so there were a lot of times where original was kept, and then a little bit of new was put in, or new was put in, a little bit of original was kept. What Andy got to do with the film was that he got to really put in a lot of what he wanted to do in its purest form, in his like original vision. But there were two things that really bugged me about it. A, just like you said, the CGI covered up, and the constant cuts, and because they were treating it like some like fast paced action film. It's like, if like there is a rule, it's like every 5 seconds there has to be a cut. But what makes like those like old school musical theater films so good is that you get to see everything, and you get to these like long sweeping one takes, and it's so impressive that they can do that, and it lets you actually enjoy the choreography and lets you actually enjoy the work. But yeah, so the direction and the CGI cover up a lot of what the Cats are actually doing when it's really intriguing choreo. And secondly, there were a lot of times where I guess that because Andy came in to replace someone else, I believe it was Wayne McGregor, something along those lines.
I'm not sure.
And I feel bad not knowing
sure.
his name, because I know that he's a really prolific choreographer, particularly in the dance and ballet world, but I'm not remembering at this moment. I believe it's Wayne McGregor. But he was originally supposed to choreograph, and he backed out. So they had already had a lot of the shot lists done. They had already determined a lot of how they were going to shoot the film. And then Andy got on set and they were like, cool, so this is going to be the shot. Can you choreograph something for this? Rather than the other way around. Rather than, here's the choreography, let's shoot that. You know what I mean? So it became more about how we're going to shoot it, not how do we best serve what's actually being done. Now, I have no judgment for, Tom Hooper. I mean, I think he's a brilliant director in what he's good. I mean, his other work is very good. But I think his work with musical films has been a bit interesting at this point.
Most everyone's distanced himself that's tied to the film from the film, which is usually not a good sign.
No.
So we'll just leave it at that.
We'll leave it
let's do the rapid fire, because I do want to get to the $1 million question. But if you were, I kind of asked this a little bit as the 4-year-old you, but if you were not going to be Munkustrap and you were going to go, let's suspend any vocal range, dance number, just if you could be anybody, which track would you want to play?
Grisabella.
Grisabella. You want to belt out memory?
I want to belt out memory in the original key, and I love and and obviously like Carrie Renee Fuller, who played it for My Time on Tour, stunning, amazing, brilliant. And this, but the idea of getting to come on stage a couple of times, having a few moments, and then just getting to scroll out memory and have everyone be with you in that moment. And also, I mean, her arc is really interesting as well. It's the constant rejection into finally, this is my story, this is my breakdown, this is my acceptance. But also, like, just that number, I would want to do that 8 times a week. I just want to do that number 8 times a week.
Yeah. Okay. So is that your favorite song, or what's your favorite song from the show?
See, that I feel like that changes. It changes. And, now that it's been a little over a year now since, I've been with the tour. And now I know it's going non-X. So, none of us are a part of that anymore. But I would say right now, my favorite song is the opening, which is crazy, but that's the most nostalgic.
Opening.
But that's just it's because it's the most nostalgic for me. It's, in my opinion, and this is maybe a controversial opinion. I'm sure other performers will disagree with me because they had to do a lot more throughout other parts. For me personally, the opening was the hardest part of the show, because you are shot out of a cannon. You are not given a second. You come out and immediately you are dancing your ass off. And the hard thing is finding breath while also having to sing. So you're skrelting things out, you're dancing, you're exhausted, and you don't have a second to kind of warm up into it. You got to be ready to go right at the top. Whereas for the ball, you've had a whole act to kind of build up to it. Now, granted, Munk moves. I mean, I would argue I'm a strong mover, but when you compare me to the people that were in the cast with me that are dancers. Yeah. I'll gladly come do my little 2-second feature in the front, where I do something kind of easy but kind of cool looking, and then go stand in the back and be like, what's going on? So that was me for most of the ball. But the opening brings like, just, are you blind when you were born? Like, I just to come out and do that again. Like, and I think it is also in part because we're in the midst of everything that we're in the midst of, and desperately just wanting to be back on stage again. But I would give, my left arm right now to go back out and get to do that opening number again.
Would 4-year-old you have a different answer?
4-year-old me would probably say Macavity. That was the song, that or Tugger. Those were the two that were always stuck in my head. And those were the two I was always like performing around the house and dancing to. I actually also did like the Peaks and the Pollicles, but not because I understood any of what was going on or because I even remembered any of I didn't remember much of Peaks and Pollicles as a kid, but it was because of Munk. Munk had this presence during that was, he finally got to kind of take control, which obviously changed for the revival and for the tour. That was then Gus's number that Munk got to kind of invade and feature in a little bit. But he does, I mean, he really does invade out of nowhere. He's like, okay, I'm here now. But
what about least favorite song?
Ooh.
Do you have one?
That's a great question. Off the top of my head, I mean, now either it's funny because then as a kid I liked it, but now I'm like, Peaks and Pollicles could probably go. Now, in my opinion, Peaks and Pollicles could probably go, and then Bustifer a little bit. Bustifer wasn't my favorite for me personally.
Yeah. Walks out the big pimp spoon.
Yeah. Which
What about favorite and least favorite cat?
Ooh.
Not character, not like cast member.
Oh no,
I want to get you in trouble.
I would never in a million years. But in terms of the actual characters, least. See, I mean the obvious answer. I mean, let's just put Macavity aside. Everyone has problems with Macavity. I discovered throughout the show that Munk as a character had a lot of problems with Mungo Jerry in particular. Because Mungo was he was like that teenager that's just a little shit, and doesn't want to listen to authority. And so there were multiple times throughout the show where Munk would tell Mungo to back off or to, get in line and start doing things as they need to be done. And Mungo would just be like, eh. And then he would kind of go around his back and just keep doing it. Because at least with Tugger's another one who I'd get annoyed with, but Tugger is my brother. He is what he is.
Yeah, you kind of have to deal with it. Him.
Mungo was always a little shit, which is also funny because my boyfriend was he actually replaced Mungo Jerry on the tour. He started as a swing and then took over Mungo, and so then there was a long time where every night I was like, "You're a fucking asshole," and he's like, you
had to deal with him. Had to get annoyed. What about favorite
cat? I mean, Demeter. Obviously, I mean, there's that very strong relationship. It would be Demeter, Old Deuteronomy, and I also think that he has this love for both Jenny and Edots and Jelly Lorem. Jenny is, I think, one of his first, because I think the reason that he sings so much in Gumby Cat is because in Munk's mind, this either she or Skimbleshanks are going to be the best option for the Heaviside Layer. So he's introducing her as she's this maternal person. She is awesome. She does all this work for us. And so I think that and those more maternal people, so Jelly Lorem and Jenny Any Dots, I think that he really loves as well.
So let's get to the $1 million question now, because you've kind of teased a couple options here now. I've argued for a while I don't think it should be Grisabella. I do want to ask this question two ways now. So the first one is the question I ask everybody. Do you think Grisabella should be the choice for the Heaviside Layer? If so, I want you to defend her. If not, who would you pick?
I'm still going to give you the if not, because I do want to talk about who I would pick otherwise. But I do think Grisabella should be the one. Well, because here's redemption story. Well, because here's the thing. Well, it's not only the redemption story. I mean, yeah, but I think that there's more depth to kind of where she comes from, because she was at one point a part of the tribe, and at least in our version, I can't speak for other versions, but she made catastrophic mistakes. She went out and she went into the world and she did things that went directly against the tribe's code. What those were, up to the interpretation, but that was, that's what it is. And now she is coming back and she is begging for forgiveness and to get a second chance. And I think that every other cat that we've met throughout the show, while they are very deserving, they will continue to be deserving. They will. And I don't think with the exception of Gus, I don't think anyone is on death's door. I think that they have got at least another year in them. Gus, actually, it's interesting. I remember talking to Tim Gulan, who played it on the road. And one of his big things with Gus was Gus has already been to the Heaviside Layer. He doesn't want to go again. He wants his cycle to be done. He wants to die outside of the ball and let himself go. So other than Gus, I don't think anyone else is dying, immediately. Whereas Grisabella, I mean, in memory, she basically says, if I leave tonight, I am not going to live. I will be dead. very shortly, and I will have never gotten that chance for redemption. So that's why I think that Grisabella is the strongest candidate, because she, unlike the other candidates, she will never have another opportunity. And I think that she has earned her redemption by the end of the evening.
Okay.
Yeah.
At this point, I've heard enough arguments for her that I'm starting to come around a little bit. I'm not changing my argument. But who was your if not? Because you just usually it's Gus, but you seem that Gus is not the
because
choice
I don't think Gus. At least in our version, Gus he doesn't want to.
He's done.
Well, and he doesn't even want to speak. Yeah. He doesn't want. He doesn't even want to do Gus the Theater Cat. The reason that Jelly Loram sings the beginning of Gus is because she's trying to convince him, hey, come on, just tell your story, stop being a grump, stop sitting in the corner, and then he gets swept up in it, and then that's what leads him to have the memory of when he was in the show, The Peaks and the Pollicles, and got to play the Rumpus Cat, all that. But so yeah, I don't think he'd be the choice. I think if it were to be anyone, see, I go back and forth between two people. It would be either Jenny Anydots or Skimble, but I have to pick one. I'm forcing myself to pick one here. I think from Monk's perspective, it should be Jenny Anydots, because she does the most for the tribe. She takes care of the other kittens. She keeps people in order. She keeps things running, very efficiently. And I think that she has served the tribe the best. While Skimbleshanks is a good candidate, most of what he has done is outside of the tribe. He keeps the trains on time. He does all these other things, but those aren't for us. Like, that doesn't benefit us as a tribe. Whereas Jenny Anydots directly benefits how things operate in-house.
It's interesting because every Jenny argues that they can't. They're like, I can't go. They need me. There's no way I could go.
That's fair.
The tribe needs me, which is kind of an interesting piece of that. I do want to ask this one different way now, and I'm going to remove Grisabella from it.
Okay.
But if we're Bustafer Jones and we're calling the next hit for Old Deuteronomy, who's the most deserving of that hit to go the Heaviside Layer? Like, who would be? Because now we kind of eliminate age or anything else. Just like, who's Bustafer Jones going to call the first hit on of the cast for the next serial killer hit?
While I'm thinking about this, I just thought of something else, and that's crazy. So does that make Macavity more of like a freedom fighter trying to get people out of the cult?
Yeah, Macavity's like the hero in that story.
What? That's crazy. All right, so who's the next hit though? Because
he knows his it's his brother too, right? Or I guess there's some relation too, if you assume, or maybe it's dad. It's his dad, right? Wouldn't you assume if you're Deuteronomy would be Munk, or Macavity would be
Munkustrap's brother.
Deuteronomy would be Macavity's dad then.
Yeah.
If you're brothers.
Yeah. Most
likely. So he knows his dad's a serial killer and he's trying to protect everyone else.
That's interesting. Oh man. But Bustafer's next hit would probably be, it's interesting because I think that there's also a love triangle between Bustafer, Jenny, and Jelly, which is why they both kind of sing in that number. So I would say his next hit would probably still be Jenny, because I think that he doesn't want that. Well, but no, because now he would want that continued attention. That's the kind of person he is. He likes.
I'd say it's always the boyfriend.
He likes having both of them.
Suspect number one.
You know what? Maybe it would be Tugger, because Tugger takes a lot of attention from the ladies. Bustafer also gets a lot of attention from the ladies. So then by taking Tugger out, then all of the eyes come back to him.
That's a good angle. I was trying to think who is going to eat the most.
Oh, there's also that.
And take from his. Like, who's going to consume the most away from what he's looking for. So Tugger's probably one from the female consumption. And then I was trying to think the only other kind of like large cat would be Old Deuteronomy, but I don't think he's gonna
I don't think he could convince Old Deuteronomy to kill himself.
Kill himself. Yeah,
I think it would probably be at that point, like, because I don't think he wouldn't eliminate any kittens, even though they're probably the most desperate for food. But if you look at Jenny with like the big coat and all that, I mean, she does a lot of work, so she's also probably consuming the most resources. I think it's Jenny.
It's true.
I really do think it's Jenny on all fronts. Then
Jenny's there for every decision. Any way we tackle this, Jenny is the one to be picked.
Jenny is the one. Yep.
I absolutely love it. Final question, most important one. How do we find you on social media? How do we stay in touch?
Right. Yeah. So I am on Instagram at Dan_J Hoy. I'm also going to Plug. I have a little music series on YouTube called Music Mondays. My boyfriend has a podcast called Whispers from Below, so you can find either of us there. We were both part of the CATS tour, and we love when people reach out and ask us CATS questions. It's actually some of our favorite things. So yeah, find me on Instagram, find me on YouTube, and reach out.
Yeah, and we'll link everything too in the description so you can make it a little easier to find everything. Dan, thank you so much for coming on, for enlightening me on now probably the only way I'm going to ever think of the show again, which is serial killer version of this. But this was super fun. I appreciate you hopping on.
I had a great time. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you everyone else for listening to this episode of The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. To follow along, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Wrong Cat Died, or check out our website, thewrongcatdied.com.